Should we talk about you-know-who? Actually, let's not, because this is the new Tesla Model Y. It's been thoroughly revised for 2025, and over the past couple of years, it's topped several best-selling lists for best-selling car, best-selling EV. So it's a hugely important and influential car. And so I'm just interested in what the new one is like, and given you clicked on this video, I hope you are too. So let's have a look, shall we? The new Model Y costs from £45,000 for the standard range car, £49,000 for the long range, and £52,000 for the all-wheel drive model we have here. That's about the same as you'll pay for a comparable rival, although with monthly finance, things can swing either way. At the front, it's pretty obvious that this is the new one. It's got a completely new light signature with this light bar, because it's 2025 and everything needs to have a light bar. But it's certainly a lot sharper than it was before. It was a little bit blobby. So this light bar is the daytime running lights, and then you've got the main headlights underneath. They're now matrix headlights, but they're still a bit rubbish. They still blind everyone at night. Around the sides, not much has changed. It's still quite sort of rounded and mobility pod-like. But the biggest changes are around the back. Around the back, we've got, again, the obligatory light bar, although this one is with a bit of a difference because it's indirect light. So there's a light hidden somewhere up here and it shines onto this plastic panel, which gives quite a neat effect at night. The design is a bit more angular, like at the front, and there's a new spoiler lip, which adds a bit of downforce to apparently compensate for the softer suspension, because that is another major change. In response to anyone who's ever driven a Model Y and found it too uncomfortable, they've made the suspension a bit softer. So the big question with this updated Tesla is it more comfortable than before? And the short answer is yes. They've put in acoustic glass, so it's actually pretty quiet on the motorway, and they've softened up the suspension. It's still on the firmer end of the class, so something like a Skoda Enyaq on adaptive dampers is going to be a lot more compliant. But actually it's pretty firm, but it's pretty nicely controlled, so it feels quite harmonious and it's perfectly pleasant. So inside it's still very much a Tesla, so you get a big screen, a dashboard, and that's kind of it. There's not much to it. Although there's more to it than there used to be, because Tesla's quite different from other car companies. They're still quite a young company, so they started out quite cleverly with cars that were very bare, very little to manufacture, and as they've learned how to actually make cars, they've just started adding bits and pieces. So compared to the old one, there's a bit more soft touch materials, there's a bit of Alcantara, there's a bit of kind of metal speaker grille, bit of cloth, so it's a much nicer place than it used to be, and it's still massively practical. It's one of the reasons to buy a Tesla. The boot is enormous, the rear seat space is really good, there's huge amounts of in-car storage. They've really got that figured out, but fundamentally you still have to like this way that Tesla does things, otherwise you're just going to get cross with the car. So everything goes through this center screen, and I would like a few more buttons. If you're going to control everything through the screen, then Tesla's actually quite a good example, because this screen is very logically laid out and it all responds really quickly. Almost all cars, there's always a bit of lag. There's just none of that with this. And it is still very annoying that there's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but there are lots of different integrations so there's integrated Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. So once you set it all up, it actually works pretty well. The driving position is unchanged. It's pretty high for an electric crossover like this, but you've got quite a nice view out the front, and the seats are relatively comfortable. Could do a bit more side support, but it's a car you'd gladly do big distances in. Until recently, Tesla was basically the only EV maker who didn't do a kind of blended brake pedal. So in most EVs, when you start pressing the brake pedal, it uses the regen, and once it can't regen anymore, it starts using the friction brakes. Tesla's, until recently, the brake pedal only did the friction brakes, which meant that you had to have the really harsh regen, the really harsh one-pedal driving. And for one-pedal driving, it always worked pretty well. It was pretty smooth, but some people, including me, just don't like one-pedal driving. For 2025, they've put in a brake-by-wire system. So the brake pedal, it's got a hydraulic backup, but in normal driving, it doesn't actually act on the hydraulic system. It just sends a signal to an electronic actuator, and that then presses the brake pedal. And that means that the brake pedal can just sort of feel however the engineers want it to feel. And that means that now you still have the one pedal drive mode, but you can also turn it off and get a much more gentle adaptive mode. And I just find that much more relaxing to drive, because when you lift off the accelerator, you don't immediately start slowing down really strongly. The control layout of this Tesla Model Y is still a bit unusual, because you get this very small steering wheel, which is a bit weird when you first get into it, but you get used to it. And there's no gauge cluster in front of you. It's all on the screen. There's not much to it. You just get the speed in the corner. And some people don't like that. I don't mind it. It works fine. And Tesla have also come to their senses, and they've given us an actual indicator stalk. So the Tesla Model Y used to have it. It used to have a stalk for the drive selection here as well, but then Tesla took it away on the Model 3, and some people complain, not everyone, but I suspect they've reintroduced it, not because they've realised they were wrong, but because Euro NCAP will start penalising cars in a few years that don't have physical controls for the indicator stalk. The indicator stalk itself is a bit weird, because it literally only does the indicators. It doesn't do the lights, and there's no detents or anything. It just works a bit in a weird way, but you get used to it. When you go on Tesla's website, it'll still talk about it being fun to drive, but I wouldn't describe this as a driver's car, not remotely. Yes, it is very fast. This is the long-range dual motor version, so it's the fastest one you can buy at the moment, but there's almost certainly going to be a performance version. Tesla doesn't really release official power figures, but it's got in the mid 300 horsepower, so it's really pin you back in your seat fast. And sure, that's amusing, but again, not what I would call a driver's car. If you huck it into a corner, it's got wide tyres, it's got pretty stiff suspension, so it does stick. You can attack a twisty road pretty well, but it's not fun, because the steering's quite weird. They've slowed it down a bit compared to the old Model Y, but it's still very nervous off centre. You have to be very careful not to steer too much, and it just doesn't give you any feedback whatsoever. It's quite a disconnected sort of feeling car. For most people, of course, that's not why they buy an EV SUV. And the thing about this Tesla Model Y is, for all the hype and the kind of love-hate culture around Tesla, this is really a car you buy for sensible reasons, because it does the sensible stuff so incredibly well. I've already talked about how roomy it is. As a family car, there's just so much space. And even though other car manufacturers have caught up in recent years with the EV technology, Tesla, that's still what they do really well. If you drive this normally, just every day, you can get 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour out of it. Now, if that doesn't mean very much to you, that's really good. That's at least 20% better than almost any comparable EV. That means it gets more range out of a smaller battery, and that in turn means it's lighter, it's cheaper to run, it in real terms charges faster, and it's just all around a better EV. And then of course there's still the Tesla supercharger network. It's not the massive game changer that it used to be, because other cars can now use certain superchargers, but the way the navigation routes you via various chargers on a long trip, none of the other car makers do that quite as well.
A Skoda Enyaq and a Hyundai Ioniq 5 are a bit more comfortable than conventional, a Kia EV6 is better to drive. But for simple range, space and A to B convenience, the Tesla is hard to beat. Thank you very much for watching. We're here every week with videos about cars with and without engines. You can find more about the Model Y and many other cars on autocar.co.uk, and of course in the magazine, where we've done a proper comparison test with the Skoda.